Welcome to Unit 6, Lesson 1, Video 1. So we are going to start talking about how compounds and elements react to form new substances. So we have been going through and building up to this point. So we have talked about atoms individually. We have talked about elements. We have talked about how they bond to form compounds. We've talked about how to name those compounds. So now we're going to talk about how those elements and compounds react together to form new things. So the formal definition of a chemical reaction is a process whereby bonds are broken and new bonds are formed. So we end up with different substances. So end up with different substances that have completely new properties from the starting products or starting substances, we'll say. Usually energy is also going to be involved with this. So some things require energy to be added. So if you want to start a fire, which is a chemical reaction, you usually have to add a heat source or have to add other things into it to get it to work. So you have to have the right reactants, and then you'll get products from that. So reactants are what you start with. So these are the starting materials. Products are the ending materials. When we look at these reactions, reactants are always going to be on the left side. We're going to have an arrow, and then the products are going to be written on the right side of the arrow. And we have different ways that we can represent chemical reactions. We can have a word equation. So with a word equation, we use the chemical names of the elements and compounds. And in order to do that, we haven't mentioned these before, so you can cross out, remember, but we don't have to. Diatomic elements mean two atoms. There are actually 7 elements that come in pairs when they are in element form. So these are elements that come in pairs when they are in element form. So these are H, N, O, F, Cl, Br, I. And if you see a sign in my room that says Henry Brofinkel, that's a name made up with these. So if you want to remember that, Henry Brofinkel. Here's hydrogen, bromine, oxygen, fluorine, iodine, nitrogen, and chlorine. So if I say we have oxygen, oxygen is written as O2. And the reason why that bonds together deals with covalent bonding, because remember that oxygen has 6 valence electrons and it wants to have 8. And usually oxygen atoms are not by themselves. As soon as they see another oxygen atom, they bond together because they are more stable. All of these elements do that. So it's all about having a full valence shell. So you should know these 7 elements. And if you look in the periodic table, all of them but H form a 7, and there's 7 diatomic elements. So here is an example of a word equation. Oxygen plus iron yields ferric oxide. Oxygen plus iron yields ferric oxide. So we've used chemical names. Here we have 2 elements and we have a compound. The other way that we can represent a chemical equation is by using, or is a chemical reaction is by using a chemical equation. And here, chemical formulas are used to represent compounds and symbols for elements. So if we take our example up here, oxygen plus iron yields ferric oxide, and we put the symbols for each one, oxygen, O2, plus iron, there's a plus sign, and Fe for iron, yields, we have an arrow, and ferric oxide is Fe2O3. You'll also notice that we have some other things here that we'll explain in subsequent videos.